Hi, folks. Welcome back to another great interview and another great guest. I haven't spoken to this chap in 10 years. Would you believe? And the world has changed so much in them 10 years. My guest is Simon Parks. Good evening, Simon. How are you doing?
Hello, Alan. You've actually got younger, not older.
I know. I'm lacking the hair. The hair's gone, but my face is looking good. And you too, you haven't changed at all, Simon. So fair
Uh,
play. Now,
Very good.
Now, listen, for people we've talked before, 10 years ago was the last interview on OIM radio, and we did do a few interviews around that time, even going back to 2013. But
Yes.
so many people have woke up over the years, and just for them, can you give us a quick bio of who you are and what you do?
Right. Okay. Very, very quickly then, for anyone who perhaps is new to this, sort of went public in about 2010, and that was predominantly with alien experiences because I wanted to empower people so that they didn't feel they were going mad. There was no one to talk to. And then I started connecting consciousness. And then by 2015, Becky and I revamped Connecting Consciousness. So we have the model that we have, which is a worldwide organization, something like 125,000 people, nearly in every country of the world. And they meet online or sometimes, face to face when they can, and they share news, they support each other. And so that's where we are in terms of our impact, if you like, with the world. And then about 2015, when one of the ambassadors to the Chinese elders contacted me and said, about the RV and wanted me to play a part in that. And then shortly after that, I had a 15-minute or so video call with President Putin. Um, that was quite exciting. We've really been working forwards from that. My background, my mother worked for MI5, but really she was working for the National Security Agency of America. My grandfather, who was a British diplomat, he was working for MI6, but really he was working for the CIA.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a family that was heavily involved um, with the good guys because there were plenty of names that were brought about during my boyhood, and I was overhearing all the conversations. And so it's very clear to me that there is a good faction and a bad faction in the internal security forces. So that's really, in a very, very quick nutshell, about me.
Fantastic. Now, I know that you're involved, you have your finger on the pulse, and you are dealing on a very high level. And we're in 2026 now, and this year is supposed to be a massive game changer. So instead of beating around the bush, what do you know or what do you feel is going to be happening coming up in 2026? The reason why I say that, because we had a quick chat before the show,
Yes.
and we've been doing this a long time. And a lot of people are getting very skeptical. And as I say, I play devil's advocate because the whole it's coming. And we've been hearing that for 10 years. And maybe just something we're missing or not understanding on why it has to take time because maybe it's a kind of jigsaw that has to unfold because they have to get it right, or else if you don't get it right, it just won't work. I don't know because I'm not part of that. I'm not privy to that information, but I know you are on a higher level. So can you kind of give us some information as to that?
I think the problem is that President Trump has been in office for a year, and most people expected it all to have happened by now. That's the problem. He's been in office for 1 year. I don't see any change. I don't see any difference what's going on. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is the RV. It's been promised for years and it still hasn't delivered. So there are a lot of negatives out there. And unless, as you said, you're actually involved at some level, you don't get the other side of the fence. You don't actually see why things are the way they are. Um, the the enemy, the deep state, have been at this for thousands of years, literally thousands of years, and the good guys have been relatively new to the game. And they were so traumatized, the good guys were so traumatized by what happened to President Kennedy. They were so traumatized by the Twin Towers that they decided that they were going to have to play a completely different game, a completely different way of doing it. Um, and the difficulty, I think, has been some of the elite bad guys who are still operating because they are enmeshed into the financial world and the political world. And they can use the markets to try to destroy countries. And that's the key. And that's why President Trump has been doing all this business with the tariffs, partly because it destabilizes the bad guys. They don't know where to put their money from one day to the next. So the war's not won. I'm still blocked from going on YouTube. And I say to people, when I'm allowed onto YouTube, the war's been won. Well, I still ain't on YouTube yet, so there's still a fight. It's simply because the enemy did not cave in. I think there was a perception amongst the good guys that a deal could be struck.
Okay.
But that hasn't been the case. These top guys think that they can survive. So what perhaps should have happened 6 months ago hasn't. But it is moving in the right direction. It's just that the public aren't seeing it. I suppose there's another element to it as well. Excuse me, Alan, which is that both sides at the moment are trying to avoid the public being drawn in too much until the good guys are in a position to lay their cards on the table. So it's a very, very frustrating time. It's a very difficult time, but by no means are the good guys losing. It's just taking longer.
Yeah, well, something I said before we went live, and obviously I've become, because I've been obviously doing this a good few years, and
Mm,
I've become more of a skeptic, and a lot of people have as well. And as I
mm,
said to you, like I'm still seeing the chemtrails, I'm still seeing
mm,
the poisons in the food, they're trying to bring in the digital IDs, the CDBCs, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, we're told that things are going really well with the white hats, but yet we're still seeing this.
mm.
Again, maybe they're not a priority at the moment. Maybe that's like lower level stuff to sort out. But because we're not dealing on a high level and we're not connected to that kind of world, that's the only thing that we do see. And that's kind of our gauge, our marker to say when things are going to be changing. So, do you have any information as to when we are going to see, like the general public will see kind of changes going on?
It'll be this year, and it'll be linked to the way the tariffs work. It'll be linked to the end of the Ukraine and Russia war. It'll be a changing of some of the big, big edifices of society, like the United Nations or NATO, when these great big pillars that people can, talk about as if it was, what Western society was all about, but aren't really. They're just literally control systems. Now, when those crack and change, and you can see how they're being attacked now positively, that's when it will happen. In terms of the chemtrails, a lot of the chemtrails now are not being done by the bad guys, and they are a different agent. For years and years, heavy metals, viruses, goodness knows what's been sprayed and has survived in the top 3 feet of the soil. In a number of countries, the white hats have been using a form of chemtrailing to seed the clouds to bring down absolute torrents of water. This wasn't just about flushing out tunnels that kids were trapped in or
Mm.
there was evil going on. It was literally to wash out the heavy metals that crops roots very rarely go below 3 feet, to get that out of the way. So a lot of the chemtrails now are not the same chemtrails they were 4 or 5 years ago. And that's an absolute fact. But if the white hats then start saying that, then a million% people are going to be terrified about, well, okay, I've been poisoned. Who do I sue?
Yeah.
And the last thing that the white hats want is a massive law case that they are not actually responsible for. And what they're doing is they're taking out those individuals and departments that were responsible for this. So for a purist, it's not a good thing because they want everyone to lay the cards on the table and tell the whole truth. But the problem is when you are running a country like America, you can't bankrupt it. And if the whole world stopped turning, literally because everybody just didn't know what their life was anymore, you wouldn't have the policeman of the world, which is the United States of America. So it's a balance between trying to tell the people something and trying to get the job done. So I'm not at all disheartened. I know that there's been some massively good changes, but I also know the bad guys are clinging on with their fingernails.
Okay. Do you feel that the rest of Mondero in South America was the first stage of doing a bit of tidy up in the so the public can see?
There's been quite a few what appear to be either natural disasters or power outages or whatever it is. And that is the classic way of going in quickly, doing something. In terms of like Venezuela, for instance, that was a lot to do with the actual voting machines that Venezuela was connected with, and with some of the funneling of money through to some of the deep state within America. So everybody thought it was, China or it was parts of Germany, but it's actually Venezuela that was acting as the conduit for money to come through. And it's very important that Maduro's been arrested, because he will now face in an American court, which means any names he names will have jurisdiction, because if they're an American citizen that he names, they can be arrested. If he was taken to the World Court or he was taken somewhere else, then the federal government wouldn't have the right to arrest them. But if it's an American court, it's very cleverly done, then they can. And I think the bad guys see this happening. And so there's some desperate maneuverings going on at the moment. So I know it's difficult, but we're actually in a better position now than we were 6 months ago.
That's good. And obviously, of course, with that arrest, as I say, the general public seeing it, the actual people of Venezuela were celebrating. And I know a lot of other countries, Ireland included, said, please, Trump, come over here and do the same thing and get rid of our governments, because it's uncanny that every government, I mean, 99% of the governments are corrupt and the people don't want them, but yet they're all in power. And
Yeah.
we have this bureaucracy in Europe. You guys in the UK have left Europe. I'm not saying you're any better because you've a Keir Starmer and he's destroying the country. But we have Ursula von der Leyen, who's an unelected bureaucrat trying to dictate what we're going to do in Ireland and the rest of the European countries. Are they concerned? Are they worried about what Trump is doing?
Who? You mean the leaders of they're absolutely terrified and they don't know how to deal with it. That's why Keir Starmer created the cause of the willing, and all these different leaders try and form groups with other European leaders, because they are terrified of facing Trump on their own. Because they know that what Trump stands for is not what they stand for. And at some point, the train's going to hit the buffers. The White Hats had absolutely no intention of leaving Britain in the European Union, and they were very keen that Britain got out of that. I think you've got a very strong connection between Europe and Ireland, because in the early days, Ireland got more out of the European Union than it put in. And that's how they hook people. They say, you give us 100 million, we'll give you 200 million. Well, of course you join. And then once you're in, you suddenly realize that they've taken control of your government. So, yes, it would be nice for the 7th Cavalry to come charging in. But the reality is that, as you said, people elect these governments. Well, it's really up to people to de-elect them. You got them in, now get them out. And that's the process that happened in Britain. So the Conservatives were chucked out, Labour comes in. I've no doubt Labour will be chucked out, and then we'll see who comes in. So Britain, I think, believe it or not, is leading the way, because its people are absolutely fed up with the current government. And just like they got rid of the Tories, they'll get rid of this lot. And I hope that it's a sign to other countries that in a peaceful way, you can actually remove governments legitimately, because you've woken up. And other countries I know are behind the curve. I've spoken to a lot of people in Ireland, and they absolutely want to change the government. They absolutely do. I'm talking about
Oh, yeah, no,
Southern Ireland. Yeah,
that's a guarantee. Yeah, definitely, we
yeah,
want to change it. The problem
yeah.
is, living over here in Ireland, I deregistered a long time ago. I do not vote because
No,
I don't trust the voting system. I've seen enough evidence
sure, sure.
to see that the voting system is rigged.
Yes,
Right now, that's my own personal opinion. And
sure.
when we had the debt, when we had the financial crisis in 2008,
Yeah,
we Ireland was doing very well, and we actually ended up paying 43% of the debt of Europe. Now
yes,
that was what you call an odious debt. It means it's a debt that we didn't have to pay, but our government volunteered to pay it anyway. And
yeah,
only for that we would have been financially okay.
yeah,
And unfortunately, just recently, the Irish government has sent 125 million to the Ukraine, but they're giving out about they don't have the money to set up a local police station.
no,
I mean, it's farcical. Honest to God, it's like a puppet show over
yeah,
here in Ireland. And Keir Starmer is probably the same. Now, I've noticed that Suella Braverman or Braverman has
yeah.
just left the Labour Party or the Conservatives, I think,
Tories, yeah.
Tories, and she's gone and joined Reform. But that's just moving the chess pieces. I mean, they're the same people who caused the problem, gone to another party. So if Reform get in, because I think the Tories and Labour are finished, then the same people are going to be in control again.
Yeah, what I will say to you is that at the moment it's all about optics. What the good guys want is a strong message to the British people that the governments of old are falling down.
Mm.
And you can take people who, as long as they're not corrupt, people who are made mistakes or what have you, but as long as they're not evil people, and you can give them a chance. But yeah, you wouldn't give a chance to someone who was like a paedophile or anything like that. But if somebody's just a typical usual politician, well, maybe if they work for somebody else, they want to pay back a debt. They want to actually clear their name. So I wouldn't be too quick to jump against people. But certainly at the moment, the important message to get across is that the traditional parties are collapsing. And so when people leave one of the two traditional parties, it does send that strong message. So perhaps it's more to do with the advertising of these governments collapsing than it is about the future.
I think it's probably the rats leaving the ship. Do you think?
Yeah, but that's great because if public in Britain think, oh, right, the Labour government or the Conservatives are basically a sinking ship, well, that's the message that, the good guys want to come across.
Brilliant. Well, I'm not seeing it over here in Ireland, but I'm
No.
living in hope that something changes. The
It
trouble
will,
is that
it will, sorry to interrupt you, it will take longer because remember, ERA is part of the European Union. It's part of that. And until that fragments, all the individual countries really are, they're in trouble. So when that fragments, then you'll find individual countries standing on their own 2 feet.
brilliant. I'm not too sure how it's going to work on a party level because it's very hard over here in Ireland to set up a party, and they've made it that way. So it's difficult. And we have Tweedledum and Tweedledee who keep voting each other in. We have a tea
Fine
party.
Gael, yeah, Fine Gael, of
Yeah,
course. Um, and the important thing I think is that if you can't set up a new party, you have to cleanse the top command. And I think that's what you'd be looking for. You'd be looking for top people to leave and names that you've never really heard of suddenly coming in. That's the greatest sign that the good guys have taken control.
well, I hope that happens soon. We have Micheál Martin, who's an ex-school teacher. How does he know anything about business? And we have
Mm.
Simon Harris, who's an ex-T boy and left college halfway
Yeah,
through. And these people are running the country. I
yeah,
mean, it's just it doesn't make sense to me. But I'm hoping down the line that people wake up and realize that.
mm,
See, again, the voting system. We can't rely on the voting system
no,
because we know that things do go on, and people have seen it and witnessed it and recorded it, and boxes coming in and out,
yeah,
so
of
that's
course.
why a lot of people have deregistered, which I know is probably not the solution. But anyway, let's move on.
Okay.
That last year we heard about the whole rapture in September, right? 24th of September is supposed to be rapture. Now I know it's a Christian thing, but you might relate it to the whole ascension process as well. Then we had Three Eye Atlas was
Mm.
supposed to be a ship coming in, it's going to land and talk about disclosure and everything else on the 19th of December. That didn't happen. And
No,
there's a lot of talk about the split taking place,
yeah,
Dolores Cannon and all that stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any of that. Have you seen anything like that or heard anything from your
Yeah,
point of view?
but you see, what I say is that the audience, not your audience, I think your audience are too clever, but those audiences, you're listening to the wrong people. The three things you've put out, I have never publicly or privately said would happen.
Okay.
Um, I've been absolutely clear about that. And in fact, I did a small podcast on the Three Eye Atlas because I was so heartily sick of all the nonsense that I was hearing. And in fact, it was Kerry Cassidy who was absolutely bang on the same as me. And we seem to be the only two who, had the same element. Um, so Dolores Cannon is correct. There will be a split, but not at the time that all of these so-called gurus who seem to pretend they know everything we're talking about. So the three things you've talked about, Three Eye Atlas was real, but not the story that was being given as not the story that I'm aware of.
Okay.
The Rapture, that's too early. That wasn't. And what was the final one? The
It
third
was
one?
the Dolores Cannon splitting
Oh
off.
yeah, yeah. There was
Yeah.
I missed one though. I don't remember. But basically the ones you've talked about, thank goodness I actually came out and said, no, that's not right. Because it just wasn't right. And it's been proved not to be right as well.
Okay, well that's great because over the 10 years, a lot has happened. And I
Sure.
think what I've seen, I said to you just off air before we start recording, in the early days, the media, there was a lot of camaraderie, and we were all on each other's shows. Maybe because there was only a few of us, and we were all kind of supporting each other. Now,
Yes.
I think it's very saturated, and I think there's people involved in the yacht media for the wrong reasons. I think they're involved in trying to they see it as a way of making money, and the
Yes.
secondary part is trying to get the truth out there. And
Yes.
it kind of upsets me in that way because my
Mm.
motivation has always been trying to help to educate and not charge for anything. And I know that that's big. I know that's important to you as well. And one of the things you asked me is, do you charge for your interviews? And I said, no. And you said, brilliant. That's great. And
Mm.
which means that we're on the same wavelength because we have the moral conscience. We want to make a difference.
Yes.
So I know down the line you mentioned about the RV, and I
Yeah.
know that you might know something more about that than I do. But in the past, I have been involved with people who've talked about the RV who said
Yes.
they had control of it and they'd be releasing funds. And of course,
Yes.
it's the never, never. It never happened, and it's coming. It's coming. What's your take on these people who claim that they're the only people that have control of the RV? And why are they saying that? And what's your take on the whole RV thing?
Well, anyone who's saying that isn't real because the people who are real do not discuss it outside of the security channels. It's someone who in Britain has or America with CIA. Britain has a MI5 number plate, a registration number because they want to be. They're not really it
Mm.
because the real people don't advertise it. So anyone who's saying they've got the RV monies, um, they're not real because the people who really do don't need to discuss that except at the level they're at.
Mm.
Um, Now, I've got personally got 5 non-disclosure agreements with the organization that's ultimately responsible for the RV. So 5 NDAs. Um, and I am part of a contract group. I can say that quite clearly. That doesn't give anything away. I've seen the documentation, and it's absolutely real. But what's made it not real are so many supposedly called gurus who keep telling everyone that you can go to a redemption center and you can get billions,
Yes. Mm.
or it's all going to happen on Tuesday. And then Tuesday comes and nothing happens. So don't worry, it'll happen on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And I don't know why these people are doing that. It seems heartless to raise up people's expectations and do that. And I've never done that. Now, with connecting consciousness, as an organization, we have taken in a number of projects from our members. And when the funding does arrive, then the process will be that I will look through those projects. It'll activate on a country by country basis. There's no shotgun start. That's just nonsense. So let's say country A activates. I will look at the projects I've received from my members. I'll look at the ones and think they're good. I then will organize a private company to come in remotely and work with the originators of those projects so that it's up into a business plan. They don't pay for that. I
Mm.
pay for it. So they don't pay anything. They didn't pay me anything when they gave me the project. I didn't charge them any money. Just do a project, give it to me because they don't have to pay anything.
Yeah.
So, right, so when that's done, that then goes up the pipe, up the ladder. If it's successful, then that project is funded, and that person who created that project will get a wage for
Mm.
running that project.
Mm.
So that's the position that we have. And Becky and I, before Christmas, had the great privilege of meeting the head of the civilian RV for the whole planet. And we had about 2 hours, 3 hours with that person, where I was able to have a very brief discussion. The money hadn't arrived, so we couldn't talk money, but we could talk policy and views and ideas. And this is the first time I'd met the head of the operation face to face. I've always done it on a secure Zoom call or phone. So this was the first time that I had the chance to sit with this person and say hi. So of course I'm in a different position because I've got NDAs. I've met the person who's going to run the civilian side, and have seen the documentation from lawyers, etc., etc. But what's spoiling it are these so-called gurus who, frankly, are just lying to the public, and I just wish they'd shut up.
Yeah, listen, I totally agree. I've seen this redemption center information and make a
Mm.
phone call and make a call, and I'm thinking it must be a scam. They must be scammers. They must be trying. Why are they doing it? What is
Uh,
it to make themselves important? I really,
don't know. Doesn't
I
make
don't.
any sense. I mean, if you think about it, there's supposed to be hundreds, if not thousands, of redemption centers in America.
Mm.
So basic logic would be how many McDonald's, I'm using that name, it could be any, but let's just do that because they're a franchise. How many are there in the United States? How many staff do you have each one? Okay. How many staff are employed? Thousands. So where are you going to get bank trained people to work in redemption centers at that? You see, when you start asking those questions, the whole thing falls down flat. Um, and people have seemed to have lost the ability to ask the right questions. They're just discernment has gone. Um, and to say, and I did discuss this 5 years ago, to say, oh, look, you're going to a redemption center, you're going to get 100 million for your dinar or your Zim, and then you sign a 3 month NDA and off you go. My answer to that was when my mother was recruited by MI5, they followed her for 6 months before they approached her. And when they knew her movements inside out, then they signed her up. You don't just give someone a responsibility of money or anything unless you know them absolutely inside out. So the whole thing is just nonsense. And I think it's disgusting that people are being promised something that they'll never get. And at least with us, we are an organization that's a spiritual organization, that's a supportive network. And we pride ourselves that, we won't put anything out there unless we're absolutely convinced it's as true as we can possibly get. And because of my position, and also Becky now, because Becky's got an NDA and she's involved in that side of it. We know it's true, but not what these gurus are saying. It's not like that at all. And there's going to be some very disappointed people.
Yeah, I think there will be. Because when I was involved in this in another life regarding, we were putting together, I had an Irish group and
Okay.
there were, although, there was no money involved because nothing ever happened, but we were
Sure.
getting things organized.
Yeah.
And what I came across with the group was we had some great people with great ideas, but they had no business background. And I wouldn't be asking them for a business plan because it'd be
Mm.
too detailed, but I requested just some information from them to give us
Mhm.
an idea. And they kind of said, well, I'd like to do this. I'd like to set up an organic animal farm or whatever.
Yeah.
And I said, well, how are you going to do that? What's your plans? Well, I don't have any plans.
Mm.
So I found out quite quickly that a lot of people had great ideas, but they didn't have the
Mm.
skills, or the background, or the understanding in business to set
Yeah.
up. So one of the things that I proposed as a plan was to set up a head office support center for anybody who got the funding.
Yeah.
They needed help with web design, accounts, PR, marketing, anything like that. They could
Yeah.
come to the head office and we would help them. And they'd have funding for a 5 year period,
Okay.
which would get them off the ground so they can start funding themselves. And then they would be able to they have the backup and the support there because
Okay.
we wanted everybody to be successful, whoever got funding.
Sure.
So we
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that was the plan. The other
Mm.
idea that they had also was anybody who actually put funding in
Mm.
had to be for the country they were in, because
Mhm.
there were some people saying, "Oh, I want to get funding to help the kids in Somalia or whatever," and you
Mm.
think, "No, no, no. If you live in Ireland, the funding should go to Ireland, or if you live in the UK." So there were some great principles
Mm.
in this structure that we had organised. Um, but as I say, there was a lot of promises made regarding the funding, but it never came
Mm.
true.
Mm.
And there's some great people out there, as you know, Simon. I know you have a lot of people in your group, and they
Sure.
have their heart on their sleeve, and they want to make the change. They want to make a positive change.
Mm.
Now I know you can't give dates or anything like that, but
No.
have the people told you?
Yes, the answer is yes, but I can't tell you.
Okay,
So
so you
just go back. Yeah, I'm sorry I cut you off there. Just to go back to the point you made, it's very valid. Um, I said to our group, my group, that I didn't want a business plan at this stage because I wanted the frequency of their energy, their spirituality to be on it. And I actually wanted just half a page of their ideas because I know that generally speaking, spiritual people aren't necessarily bank managers.
totally, yeah, yeah, agreed, yeah.
So the plan always was that when this organization was funded, we would pay for those entrepreneurs to work with those individuals and make them up to standard, if you like, up to speed. So they would do the business plan for them. But why your plan wouldn't work is because anyone who receives funding is in a contract group.
Mm,
That's the key word. There's a contract group. So there are a number of these groups across the planet. I think of an umbrella, and the head of that group is responsible for funding out through that umbrella. Well, you keep it in the family. So if you receive money in one contract group, you will not be allowed to go out of the family to do it. You have to do all your operations within that. Um, and I talked about another organization that unfortunately, was supposed to be funded some few years ago and, didn't get funded. That's the One Love Society.
mm,
And, they were told by Ron Giles, look, we've just been told you're not spiritual enough. We're not going to get funded. So you guys go out, go to Redemption Center, get your money, and we'll help you to spend it. But my take on it is there's no redemption centers, there's no banks to work with. If people are lucky, if they're lucky, my opinion, for what it's worth, is that they'll be able to change their dinar at the bank rate, whatever that is,
mm.
if they're lucky. As long as, the three zeros aren't knocked off, we think that'll happen. And also that they don't demonetize everything.
Mm.
Say in India, Modi did away with the 50,000 rupee note literally overnight. And so that's why we've got CC, so that individuals aren't going to go and get $100 million, but they could start a project to help the community and get a decent wage for 7 years, 7 year project.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Now I know you have to be very careful with the RV because you can't be premature with it, because the powers that be are still, or powers that were, let's say, because obviously we're
Yeah.
on the up with the white hats. But my understanding is that you're going to have to be careful when that release is going to take place, because you have to make sure as soon as, because you could prematurely release the money, and then the negative, the elites could come in and either stop it, take it away, and take it, and do all that kind of stuff and be
Mm.
negative with it. So I
Yeah.
know you have to be careful that when it's released, it will stay in the bank account and it won't be taken by them.
Well, it won't go into a bank account. It'll be what's called a portal bank. Anyone who, the people don't know, but why would they know? I'm not being rude. They just wouldn't know. You can't put the sort of monies we're talking about into regular bank accounts. It's for the reasons you've given. So, the gurus some 5 years ago were saying, or everyone is going to go to a redemption center and get a Q phone and get a Q laptop and all this. No, only the people who hold the budgets will have a portal laptop. It'll run through to a secure location, and then you draw the money down through the QFS. It goes nowhere near the banks. But what you can do is put pocket money into your own bank account. So you put your living expenses into that, but you use your it's not even called a Q laptop, it's just a laptop. And a secure system to it. So the baddies have got no way of getting it. The other thing is that the banks are not fighting against this. People don't understand that, because the bankers are supposed to be the big enemy. But the bankers are going to do very nicely on this. Thank you very much. They are going to do really well, and they are playing along. So it's in their interests to work along, because there's going to be an awful lot of people who are going to be in a position of responsibility, setting up projects, doing this, doing that. And that's customers for the bank, customers. So it's not about the bankers. That level is working very well with the white hats. It's the handful of families above them that they're the problem. So there isn't an issue. Everything is as it should be on the control system wise. It's just that some of these big players didn't want to come around and sit around the table.
Right, okay. So is 2026, could that be the year, do you reckon?
Oh,
When
I do
that
think
get the
so. Yeah,
ball
I
rolling?
do think so. Yeah, I do think so. I, I, I said to Kerry Cassidy that last year was the last year I would speak at her conference.
Okay.
I said to her and the audience on the day, I said, I won't be coming uh, to 2026's conference, and they can draw from that what they will.
Right, okay. And what do you reckon on disclosure? Because obviously we are seeing so much information coming out now. I mean, it's not the guy in the bedroom on his podcast talking about UFOs. We're talking about the White House. We're talking about the Senate, Washington coming out in Senate meetings. I mean, it's literally in your face. What do you think's going to be happening now with that?
Everything can only happen after the QFS has activated. That's you can't do anything. But what they're doing is preparing the ground. In his first term of office, towards the latter part, President Trump had a conversation in front of the camera with one of his sons, and he was asked about Area 51. And instead of saying, "This is the president," instead of saying, "Well, it's all nonsense," President Trump said, and I quote, "There's some very interesting things in that place." So he's actually quite keen to bring some level of disclosure, not all, but some level. So when the president has let his mind open to it, then those around him think, okay, that means we can push a bit.
Yeah.
So some of the top men and women around him are now feeding information out, which wouldn't have been allowed just a few months ago. So yeah, I think we've got disclosure coming, but only when the healing of the world has taken place. Public can't cope with the comments of aliens if you're still wondering about, can I pay my mortgage? Can I pay my rent? How am I going to be able to feed the kids this week? Come on, let's just get our own house in order first, and then we'll see about the wider issue. But yes, I'm convinced disclosure of some element is on its way.
Do you think there's going to be some kind of redemption for people who are robbed by the fractional reserve banking system, the way it was set up? Because we've all been scammed. Anybody who has a mortgage and, all that kind of stuff, it's all been, we all know the banking system was a scam from day one. So would the RV, or is there any going to be any exemption for people who are, I mean, a lot of people have suffered and committed suicide and been
Mm.
kicked out of their homes, all
Sure,
because the system is completely corrupt.
sure,
And I'm not saying, well, maybe some people might be shouting with the pitchforks that you want justice, but some people just want to have a home, and to have a normal life and have
mm,
jobs are very hard to get these days because of they're saying that in the next 5 years, 40% of jobs are going to be lost due to AI. And a
mm,
lot of people are concerned about that. So
sure,
there's all these kind of concerns.
sure.
Do you think Trump and the people around him are kind of looking at that? And again, the RV might be a way to solve that problem.
I wouldn't too worry about the AI every time I put on Google and I read what how AI has translated it. I think, well, there's no way this is, as it stands, is going to take anyone's job. I think AI is just another system for the stock market to rip off as much money as they can before the bubble bursts. That's my own personal view. AI in the military sector, or which has been around for a good 10 years, is far more advanced than the second-rate AI that's been released to the civilian network. Okay, to your next point, perhaps which is more important, um, I've I've held a middle ground. I don't believe taxes right across the board will go. I think that interest on credit cards will be reduced. I don't think it'll be removed entirely. I think it could go between 5 and 10% on credit card interest. That's what it could go to. In terms of a payback, well, first of all, the president will, when he's able to, give every American citizen an amount of money. Now, I'm just talking about America at the moment.
Okay.
So every American will receive an amount of money, and then the taxes that they pay, if they're earning under $150,000 a year, they'll pay no taxes.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely what he wants to do. Now, Ireland, United Kingdom ain't America.
Yeah.
But if America does that, the pressure on every world leader to do the same will be intense because if they don't, they'll be voted out of office. So what America does, everyone follows a year later. So what I'm hoping is that there's a quite a substantial tax cut in the US, and then other countries, in order for their politicians to stay in power, have to do the same thing. Now, every country has access to the RV. Okay, there is an option to support countries. There is a forget about individual people. There is an option to support countries, but you don't support a country if it's corrupt. You don't support a country if the leaders of that country are fighting against you. So I can see a time when certain countries will be gifted an element of resource so that they can take off the tax burden of their people.
Mhm.
But you wouldn't do it to Britain because then everyone would love Keir Starmer and they'll all vote for Keir Starmer. So
Mhm.
why would you reward people who have been on the gravy train in politics and trodden on people to get to the top? No, you wouldn't. You would only want to empower those who have a history of trying to fight for justice. So countries will receive what I would call a benefit, financial benefit, only when their leadership is ready to handle it.
Yeah. See, Ireland is quite unique because back in our constitution in 1919, because of the War of Independence and the 800 years we had with the UK,
Yeah,
our forefathers actually had a thing called direct democracy. Yeah, and he put it in the constitution, which meant
yeah,
that if anything was to change in the country, we'd have a referendum. And if
yes,
the politician wasn't doing what he said, you could
yeah,
sack them, but it's called recall. But there's a politician back in the 1920s who actually conveniently kind of left that out, and then it was kind of removed over the years. And we had a big thing a few years ago called a big march, a big protest called Reinstate Article 48, which is direct democracy back in our constitution. So we had that already in, but the powers to be took it out,
Mm.
which is a pity because that mean that if anything happened regarding, do you think this is good for Ireland, a referendum would be called, but we don't have that facility anymore. So we kind of had that. We just need to bring that back in, and we need people to come on board. Now, obviously, one of the things they try to do is to get the politicians to buy into the direct democracy. But the way things are, as you mentioned, we've Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil since 1922. They're the two main leading parties since 1922. So what does that tell you? And the two-party system, it's in the UK, it's in America, it's in Ireland, it's all over the place. So what I'd love to see this year, well, like everybody, it's just for, again, redemption for people. And the tax thing is always going to be an issue. I know in Ireland tax is voluntary. I've evidence to prove that and back it up. It's voluntary on a, from your salary point of view. I'm not talking about corporation tax. I'm talking about on your salary. That's always been voluntary. There's no law in Ireland that says you have to pay tax. And I
No,
have,
there's no law anywhere that says that.
yeah, in America it was the same because we had that director, um, who did that documentary about it, and he found out that he didn't have to pay tax in America as well. So I suppose, it's going to be a bit of a tiptoe for the next 10 years, I think. Everything's going to have to be rolled out logically and in a way that doesn't frighten people or scare people or worry people.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's going to take time. Would you agree with that?
Not 10 years. It won't take 10 years. It's got to be done within President Trump's term of office.
Do you think Vance would be the next? Is he being geared to be the next to take over from Trump to carry
I
on?
don't know. I mean, if in the next few months it is proven beyond doubt, which means through the Supreme Court, that there was substantial gerrymandering with the election that Trump always claimed was stolen, then the Supreme Court would have the power to rule that President Trump would have another term of office.
Wow. Okay.
See? So that's another possibility that we could go down. And with the med beds, which are real, but there isn't one in every town, let me make that clear. But med beds, which are real, it should be enough to keep key players, ticking along for a few more years yet.
And do you know when the med beds are going to be released?
Um, well, they'll only be released after the public RV and when it's legal to do so, because at the moment the FDA in America and other health bodies need to sanction any medical treatment. It has to go through the system. And these haven't been sanctioned through that because they operate outside of the system. They are controlled They're controlled purely by the United States military. And therefore, they operate on military bases, which means federal land, which means they are exempt from the FDA. Now, that's very different situation than we've got in other countries. But basically, and I've said it before. Hello, darling. I've said it before that med beds will be first out for humanitarians who are in charge of budgets for countries. So basically, each country will have a budget which the government of that country has no control over. And that budget will be spent on humanitarian projects. If the government of the country wants to take kudos for it, wants to cut the ribbon and lay the first brick, I've got no problem with that at all. And they can try and win votes on it. I don't care about that. But they're not permitted to stick their nose in and try and prevent it or have any ideas. They're not interested in their ideas. They don't play any part in that. But what will happen is that when those rules have been finally set in concrete, then the med beds can start to appear on the high street. But at the moment, they are very few and far between.
Okay. And is there any protection for the people who are going to be taking care of the RV who receive funding? Because I know that was one of the questions a lot of people had regarding security, that they would be protected just in case the elites decided, well, we're going to go after that person and take them out or whatever, you know?
Well, no disrespect, there won't be anybody bothering to go after people who run projects. Um, if you set up a school, for instance, which is being funded, there's absolutely no point in taking out the person who created that because you just find another person to run it. So it isn't at that level that the issue will be at the people who are managing the budgets for countries and the top tier. So that their security will obviously be very much like the president's, really. But no, if you're running a project that we're funding or a church is funding, some of the churches,
Mm.
are going to get funded. It's not a problem because you're just delivering on the doorstep. The bad guys will be much more interested in the people who control the budgets
Yeah.
at the top of the tree. So it's not an issue for anyone who's going to work at ground level.
Okay. So to sum up, you reckon 2026 is going to be the year where it will be positive change for everybody?
Yeah, I do. I really do. I mean, I agree with you. It can't all be done in a few months. You gave the figure of 10 years. That's too long. I'd say 5 years. Um, because you see, when Nazism fell in Germany, the Americans went into a denazification education program, and that took years because you had to literally change the perception. And what we're trying to do is change the perception, not about Nazism, but about the lack of spirituality. People are just inherently greedy
Yeah.
because they've had nothing. If you have nothing, then you fight each other to survive. If you come from a land of plenty, you don't need to fight because, hey, there'll be egg and toast there in the morning and there's
Yeah.
your cup of coffee and it's fine. But if you come up the hard way, you talked about Glasgow before we come on the call, and you got some of these cities where all over the place, and also rural areas can be very poverty stricken as well. Then, you know, that's why people are like that. It's not because they're bad, it's because they've been treated badly. And if you treat people properly, and value them, and then not paid slaves, then then that will not happen. You see, if you get up at, I don't know, whatever, 6 o'clock in the morning, and you go to work at 8 and you come home at 5, and you just earn enough to pay the rent, mortgage, put fuel in your car, unless you've got an electric car. I don't know why you would have one of those.
Yeah, I
Um,
totally
and
agree.
got your kids to school, and you bought them clothes, and oh my God, it's Granny's birthday. How am I going to do that? If you're living like, and most people are living like that, it's a paid slave. So we can't think straight. We can't think straight because we're surviving from one day to the next.
Yeah.
If the RV can give people some breathing space, cut their taxes, give them extra money when they're sick or when they retire, try and build community, then I think the pressure begins to drop. The amount of theft from shops will drop. The amount of robberies in the street will drop. I'm not saying it'll stop,
Yeah.
but the driving force, if it's not just the thrill of it, the driving force is to have money to live.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not talking about feeding a drug habit. I'm talking about people who are stealing to live. And in the United Kingdom, although they'll never admit it, if people stealing bread from a supermarket, the police won't bother
Yeah.
because what do you do? But if they're stealing whiskey, then of course the police will involve. That's the level we've got. We've got CCTV cameras watching the meat counter. You've
Yeah.
got tickets, electronic RFID chips now buried inside the food to
Yeah.
stop the people. What sort of a world is it where it reminds me. I'm sorry to go on, but
That's
this always
okay.
I love this bit. I lived in London a long time in my life, and the wealthy whose jobs were in London used to live in these enclaves, and these were apartments surrounded by a 15-foot wall and electronic gates and guards, and they were pretending they were somewhere really nice. But every time they came out, they saw the poverty, the violence, the filth. Now, stop pretending, accept that we've got a broken society and actually start fixing it. Now, in our own way, that's what we believe in. And that's why perhaps we're going to be funded because in the 10 years, no, we've known each other about 13 years, you and
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't changed our view. We've not gone down the road to make people like us more, or oh, we need to change tack because no, this is the values we have. That's a consistency. And I think people are not stupid. I think people say, look at those guys. He's saying the same thing he did 10, 15 years ago, and he won't change, he won't be corrupted. And so I think there's a place for all good men and women, and I think it's about educating. So I'm very excited about the future, and it just can't come soon enough.
Yeah, and look, you're spot on with that. If people go back to the interview we did back in 2015, 2013, we are basically the same people saying the same thing.
Yeah.
We haven't changed. And it's
Mm.
not an ego massaging thing. It's the way we are. It's just the way we are. Personally, I want the best for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think the idea of the RV, imagine having a project that's funded and you could go to somebody and go, what job do you want to do? Not the job you're doing because you hate that job. What job
Yes.
would you like to do? So you want to work with animals. Okay. Well, we're going to put you in this animal sanctuary where you can go in and work with animals. You'll enjoy it and you'll have a good salary. Now, because they always say if you're doing something you enjoy, it's not work.
Yes.
Right? So people get hired. So you say to people, what job do you want to do? Well, you want to do that. Okay, we're going to hire you to do that job. That's
Yeah.
what you want to do. You'll enjoy that and you'll get paid. How happy are they going to be?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't take a lot to work it out as you and your team have been doing and breaking it down. Simon, it's been fantastic catching up with you after
Just
10
can't
years.
believe it's 10 years.
Oh man.
What have we been doing with each other? We should have connected at least two or three times. It's just crazy.
It's fun. It's just, but time is flying. I
It
think
is.
we didn't even get to that to talk about how fast time is speeding up. I think we're going to have to do a part two and talk
Well,
about,
don't you dare let this go longer. When you look, get your feedback. If the audience like us together doing this, I'll come back and do another one. If the audience think, nah, it's all right, I'm not interested, I won't come back. Give the people what they want.
yeah, no, look, well, we won't leave it this long next time. We'll do a part two down the line. We'll do
Bless
it.
you.
We'll do it. Here's what we'll do. We'll give this a few months
Yeah.
and then I'll call you and say, right, Simon, let's do a
Can
check-in.
we do it a few weeks? Because in a few months I won't be allowed to do this.
Okay, let's do it in a few
Okay.
weeks. Let me see. This is the end of January. How about
Yeah.
the end of Feb? Would that be okay?
Yeah, yeah, that's fine.
Say the
Yeah.
end, say 3 weeks time, 4 weeks time.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Because there's come a time when I won't be allowed to do stuff like this.
Brilliant. Okay, well, before I let you go, Simon, again, big thank you for coming on. Give out
Yeah.
all your details to let people know where they can find you.
Oh, okay, right, fine. Because you see, I wasn't even going to think about that. Right, simonparks.org. That's the official website. And you can join Connecting Consciousness. And to join, it's free. You don't pay. But you do have to think very carefully about who you are and what you are because there's our logo and there's a heart in the center. And you have to put your arrow, your cursor right on that heart and click. And that's a contract between your higher self and the high values we hope that we have, so that there's no money changing hands, but it's a connection of love. And that's the sort of people we want. And so come to simonparks.org. And if you like it, just join.
Fantastic. Simon, you're a gentleman. Thank you very much.
Oh no, you're a very good guy, and I'm delighted to have the chance to chat to you again. Thank you.
Cheers, Simon. All right, take care.
God bless.